Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third episode of The Making of the Fuel Speedway. In this episode, we'll be talking about villains and rivalries. This episode, we get introduced to Thawn Oberhauser, who is basically the closest that will come to having a villain in the series. If Solo Makubane is the hero, then Thawn Oberhauser is the villain. Of course, because it is one big ensemble, there is no one hero and one villain, but damn, this is as close as we're going to get. And I wanted to go all out. The story, when we opened the story, I specifically had him wearing a three-piece white suit, almost like one of those villains who his clothes contrast with who he is inside. He's full of darkness and ugliness, but his suit is pristine and white. And I also wanted to have him stand out by being one of these guys who, instead of showing up in sports gear or something more casual, he would show up to the Fuel Speedway in a suit, which was strange because why is he coming in a suit? He's like a heavyweight boxer who, instead of just wearing what makes him comfortable, he'll always show up to a press conference or whatever in a suit. And that's what this is. We find out that where he's going, as much as he's going to the Fuel Speedway, he's going to a press conference. And that's where things get interesting, because while we have now established our villain, the fact that he's rich and he doesn't need to do this on a weekly basis, he's not doing it for money, he's doing it simply because he wants to. He's doing it because he likes the idea, he believes he's good at it, and he likes the idea of being called the best at racing. So we quickly established that the reason that him and Solo, our hero, are at this press conference is because they are the finalists of our Royal Tourney. Remember, the arc I said started in episode 1. Now it's finally reaching something of a climax. Of course, the climax is actually going to happen at the pay-per-view, but nothing stops this from acting as sort of a pre-climax, because now we find them face to face and in front of cameras, the press, because Moodswing decided to call all out. He needed to make this feel big. He needed it to make it feel real. And once again, circumventing the usual tropes of how motorsports would do this, he decided to go back to, he says, boxing to make it to have it more class. But in actual fact, he's going with the wrestling thing, which is that you're going to have a press conference with these two titans who want to face each other. And he wanted specifically to have them express their aggression. That's what this was about for Moodswing. He is the ultimate puppet master. He's the ultimate showmaker. He wanted this to specifically boil down to a series of accusations between these two, and that's exactly what happens. Because of, naturally, Thawn plays the bad guy because he knows he's the bad guy. He doesn't relent from being known as the bad guy because he doesn't believe that takes away from his power on the track, on the racetrack. In fact, if anything, it lends to it because he allows himself to get into the head of his opponents, which is exactly what he does. As soon as he's asked what he believes will make him win this Sunday, he immediately points out that he dresses like a champion. He dresses like a champion. He is a champion. Everything he does screams champion, or in this particular case, king. Meanwhile, Solo, the way he dresses, the way he moves, it's not like that at all. And this was an important statement for me to put in there because I needed to contrast these people, because the way I see it, all the other characters, in terms of whether they're good or bad, stand in between these two, with Thawn being the ultimate villain on one end of the spectrum and Solo being the hero on the other end. The fact that one is white and one is black just sweetens the deal. It's not, I try not to make that important, because end of the day, these guys are going to be facing so many different people of different races that doesn't really matter. This is just the first race. That doesn't really matter. But in this particular case, I felt it was an important metaphor in terms of how different they are. Not whether one is black, one is white. That won't play into who wins this Sunday. But it makes a beautiful picture when you see it in this way, that they are complete opposites. They're complete opposites, and they're standing here, and every other character stands in between them. Whether those guys are white or black, it doesn't really matter again, but they stand in between these two pillars of the spectrum. And inevitably, exactly what Mutsung wanted, these guys end up butting heads. In fact, they actually go too far because they actually try to hit each other, and Mutsung has to jump in there and make sure that doesn't happen, because he has a rule. He has a rule about how things are handled in Formula X, and that rule is that no fighting. All issues must be handled on the racetracks, no exception. So when Thawn, the Impaler, as he's, can you call it, affectionately known, and the franchise Solo, as he's affectionately known, try to butt heads, he pulls them apart, and he immediately says, you'll have the means of letting out this anger, and you'll do it on the racetrack, except you won't do it against each other. You'll be doing it as partners, which is when we are now introduced to the third type of race. In the first episode, we were introduced to one-on-one. Second episode, the drag race, and now we're introduced into relay races, which is really important because now I'm continuing to world build, and that's basically, it fills out the three main types of races that there are. In fact, the three titles that there are. There's the Crown, which is basically race between races. It can be raced in any race, but mainly in one-on-one, circuit races. Then there is the Duke or Duchess of Drag, depending on whether the title is held by a male or female, which is raced in drag races exclusively. And then there's a relay Baron or Baroness, or the combination of the two, which is in relay races. And this I felt was important. It worked here because it's not just that I'm introducing the relay race, it's also that these two people, these two rivals, have to work with each other to win the race. And now we have to establish the mindset. We have Solo, who says, hey, look, I'm here to win. Remember, I said he's a sportsman first and foremost. So he is here to win. And if he has to work with this guy to do it, that's what he'll do. Thawn, on the other hand, is all for the mind game. So the way he sees it, hey, as long as I'm not the one who actually loses the race, it's not my problem, people will see him as the weak element of the team. I'm just here to show my stuff and to prove I'm the best. I'm not here for these relay races. So we get on with the race, which is intricately introduced as something, it combines relay running with swimming, and just to give that element, to give that feel of what it is. It's not just a tag team match, because I know in the previous episodes I kept going on about professional wrestling, and this is specifically stated to not just be a tag team race, but rather a relay race where one racer goes and then the next one goes and then the first one goes again. And this basically sets the tone of what relay races are and how you need to work as a team. It's important who starts the race, it's important who ends the race, and it's important how you work together. And this the way they work together or don't work together, Solo and Thawn, establishes basically the theme of their relationship or lack of relationship, the theme of their rivalry. Because we watched during the race, the first race that I finally put to paper, how a race basically is just a mind game and a means of getting inside your opponent's head, whether you're facing them or working with them. And that basically establishes the tone of how I write the races. The one thing that can be promised every single episode is finally revealed in the third episode, and we finally see that it's not just about racing. It's about a story. Every race is a story about the characters who are participating in it. So even when the race ends and Thawn and Solo inevitably lose, when Thawn sees Solo with a smile on his face, he calls him out for the fact that he's the one who lost the race. He shouldn't be smiling, and there's nothing amusing about this. But before these guys can butt heads, bong bong bong, there is a cliffhanger, which introduces us all the way to another familiar trait that will continue to recur, which is that every episode is a promise that another episode will come. And in this episode, I used the technique of introducing the key players of the following episode, and which introduces the idea of a man looking at another man's wife. And that was specifically designed to, leave you with the race in completion, but the story with something still to tell.